It is said that together, these families possess fortunes greater than the combined wealth of the world's 15 richest contemporary billionaires. And although their names are whispered rather than shouted in public discourse, their influence is embedded in almost every major institution, industry, and financial mechanism. Among these dynasties, some names are more legendary than others. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Fords, and the DuPonts. Each carries a story of audacious vision, cunning strategy, and an almost obsessive drive for legacy. The Rothschilds, architects of global credit. The story of extraordinary financial power begins in the 18th century within the narrow streets of the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt, Germany, a place marked by strict regulations, limited opportunity, and social restrictions. It was here that Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born, a boy whose destiny would forever alter the course of global finance. Even as a child, Mayer displayed an unusual acumen for numbers and a keen understanding of human behavior. While many around him focused on traditional sources of wealth, land ownership, trade, or political influence, Mayer quickly realized that the true leverage in society came from money, but not just possession of it. Real power lay in its movement, in controlling information about it, and in the ability to influence those who wielded authority. As Europe entered an era of political upheaval and frequent wars, the continent's financial systems were fragile and fragmented. Mayer saw opportunity where others saw risk. Unlike conventional merchants or bankers of his time, he did not limit himself to small-scale trade or local markets. Instead, he pioneered methods to transfer funds rapidly across borders, creating networks that could operate efficiently even during periods of extreme instability. By financing both sides of conflicts, Mayer positioned himself not only as a lender, but as a trusted advisor to rulers, nobles, and governments. His approach was subtle yet profoundly effective. He lent discreetly, gathered intelligence, and used information to maintain leverage, establishing a level of influence that went far beyond mere wealth. Mayer's vision extended beyond his own lifetime. Understanding that centralized control could be both a strength and a vulnerability, he deployed a strategy of networked family power. He placed his 5 sons in the major financial capitals of Europe, Nathan in London, who became a master of stock speculation and international finance, James in Paris, overseeing banking operations in the heart of continental Europe, Salomon in Vienna, managing Austrian financial interests, Karl. In Naples, expanding southern European connections, and Amschel, who remained in Frankfurt, directing the original family business. Each son ran a branch of the enterprise with considerable autonomy, yet their efforts were united under the family's banner, symbolized by 5 arrows on their crest, a mark of strength through unity. By 1818, less than 3 decades after Mayer began his ascent, the Rothschilds had achieved unprecedented influence. They controlled a significant portion of Europe's financial flows, effectively acting as architects of the modern banking system. Their role extended far beyond private wealth accumulation. They financed large infrastructure projects, including railways that would power the Industrial Revolution, and became critical players in government finance, from war funding to rebuilding efforts after conflicts. The Rothschilds' discretion and subtlety were key to their enduring success. They did not flaunt their wealth, yet their influence permeated the highest levels of European society. The Rockefellers, masters of modern capitalism. A century after the Rothschilds established their financial empire in Europe, across the Atlantic in the rapidly industrializing United States, another family would rise to redefine wealth, power, and the very nature of industry. John D. Rockefeller was born in 1839 in Richford, New York, into circumstances that could hardly have foretold the extraordinary influence he would one day wield. His father was a traveling salesman and con man, prone to schemes and quick profits, while his mother was a deeply religious woman, instilling in young John the values of discipline, frugality, and relentless ambition. This unusual combination of inherited traits, cunning from his father, diligence and moral focus from his mother, would shape Rockefeller into a man capable of extraordinary achievement and controversial methods alike. From a very young age, Rockefeller was fascinated by numbers and order. While other boys were occupied with play, he meticulously tracked money, transactions, and accounts, building mental systems that would later allow him to assess and manage complex industrial operations. But his ambition went beyond personal wealth. He sought influence, control, and stability in an economic landscape that was often chaotic, fragmented, and unregulated. He understood that money was not simply a means of personal comfort, it was a tool to shape industries, markets, and even society itself. Rockefeller's rise began modestly. He worked as a bookkeeper and assistant in small businesses, gaining practical experience in accounting and financial management. In 1863, he co-founded a small oil refining company in Cleveland, Ohio, which would eventually evolve into Standard Oil. From the very start, Rockefeller applied an approach that was both meticulous and ruthlessly strategic. He sought efficiency at every stage: production, refining, transportation, and distribution, and worked to eliminate waste wherever possible. By the age of 23, he owned his first refinery outright, a remarkable achievement that demonstrated his determination and foresight. As the oil industry expanded, Rockefeller's ambitions grew. He understood that competition was not merely a challenge, but an obstacle to market stability and personal control. His philosophy was simple yet uncompromising: eliminate competition, control costs, and consolidate operations. Standard Oil absorbed or outperformed smaller refineries, negotiated preferential rates with railroads, and built a network of pipelines to reduce reliance on external transport. By the time Rockefeller reached 40, Standard Oil controlled nearly 90% of the U.S. oil refining industry, a dominance that extended globally, giving him unprecedented influence over pricing, production, and distribution. However, Rockefeller's immense power attracted scrutiny. Critics and reformers accused him of monopolistic practices and the suppression of competition. In 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the breakup of Standard Oil into 34 independent companies, citing violations of antitrust laws. Yet Rockefeller turned this apparent defeat into an extraordinary triumph. By retaining significant shares in the successor companies, he multiplied his wealth many times over, demonstrating his ability to convert setbacks into strategic advantage. The very companies that emerged from Standard Oil's dissolution, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell, would go on to dominate the global energy market, extending Rockefeller's influence long after his retirement. The Morgans, crisis controllers. While the Rockefellers reshaped the oil industry and industrial production, another titan was quietly transforming the financial foundations of the United States. John Pierpont Morgan, better known as J.P. Morgan, was born in 1837 into a wealthy and well-connected family in Hartford, Connecticut. Unlike self-made industrialists, Morgan inherited both wealth and access to networks of influence. But his true genius lay not merely in money, he had the rare ability to bring order to chaos. He understood how finance, industry, and government intersected, and he had the vision to reorganize fragmented companies into coherent, efficient, and highly profitable enterprises. Morgan began his career in banking at a time when the U.S. economy was expanding rapidly but remained volatile, especially in railroads and heavy industry. He quickly gained a reputation as a financier who could rescue failing enterprises and coordinate large-scale mergers with precision. Morgan was not content to passively manage wealth. He actively shaped industries. He reorganized railroads, eliminating inefficiencies and consolidating fragmented lines into profitable networks. In steel, he orchestrated the creation of U.S. Steel by merging Carnegie Steel, Federal Steel, and several smaller companies into the world's first billion-dollar corporation. In electricity, he played a key role in merging Edison General Electric and Thomson Houston to form General Electric, an enterprise that would dominate innovation and infrastructure for decades. Morgan's influence was not limited to individual companies. He became a stabilizing force for the entire U.S. financial system. Few had the resources, networks, or reputation to act decisively in times of crisis, but Morgan possessed all three. During the Panic of 1907, the American economy faced a catastrophic collapse. Banks were failing, stock prices were plummeting, and public confidence had eroded. The federal government, still without a central banking system, lacked the ability to act decisively. In this moment, Morgan assumed the role of an informal guardian of the economy. He personally orchestrated loans, coordinated bailouts, and mobilized the resources of leading financiers to stabilize the banking system. His intervention prevented a deeper depression and earned him immense authority, but it also highlighted a troubling concentration of power in a single individual's hands. The magnitude of Morgan's influence prompted significant institutional change. The creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 was, in part, a response to his outsized role in financial stabilization. Lawmakers sought to ensure that no single financier could exercise comparable control over the national economy, while simultaneously formalizing mechanisms to manage future crises. Yet despite this regulatory evolution, Morgan's impact endured. He had laid the foundation for modern corporate finance, demonstrating how strategic investment, mergers, and the consolidation of capital could stabilize industries, increase efficiency, and generate extraordinary wealth. J.P. Morgan's story illustrates that wealth alone does not equate to lasting influence. True power lies in vision, the ability to organize complex systems, and the foresight to intervene decisively in times of instability. He was not just a banker or industrialist, he was the architect of modern American finance. Through mergers, consolidation, and strategic investment, Morgan shaped industries, stabilized the economy, and set precedents that continue to guide financial practices around the world. In many ways, he represents the quiet yet profound force behind the machinery of modern capitalism, a figure whose influence, though often behind the scenes, resonates through the structures of global finance to this day. The Fords, revolution of mass production. Across the industrial landscape of the early 20th century, one man fundamentally changed the way the world thought about production, labor, and technology. Henry Ford, born in 1863 in a modest farmhouse in Dearborn, Michigan, grew up with a fascination for machines that would define his life and ultimately reshape the global economy. As a child, Ford was endlessly curious about how things worked. He would dismantle clocks, watches, and even small engines, patiently observing their inner mechanisms and figuring out how to reconstruct them. This early obsession with understanding the principles behind mechanical operations laid the foundation for his later innovations in automobile manufacturing and industrial efficiency. Ford's career began with apprenticeships at machine shops and engineering positions, where he gained hands-on experience that was rare for someone of his background. By his mid-20s, he had developed his first gasoline-powered vehicle, a testament to his technical ingenuity and perseverance. In 1903, he founded the Ford Motor Company, an enterprise that would not only revolutionize transportation, but also transform the very concept of industrial production. The company's early work culminated in the creation of the Model T, a vehicle specifically designed to be affordable, reliable, and accessible to the average American. The Model T was more than a car. It was a symbol of mobility, independence, and the democratization of technology. However, it was Ford's approach to manufacturing that truly set him apart from his contemporaries. He introduced the moving assembly line, an innovation that drastically reduced the time required to assemble a car from 12 hours to just 93 minutes. This breakthrough not only increased productivity, but also lowered costs, making automobiles attainable for a much broader segment of society. By streamlining production and implementing systematic efficiency, Ford created a model for industrial operations that would be studied and replicated worldwide. His approach was not merely technical, it was a philosophical shift. Ford also revolutionized labor relations and economic participation. He understood that productivity and consumer demand were interconnected. By instituting the $5 workday, more than double the average wage of his time, Ford ensured that his employees could afford the very cars they built. This policy fostered loyalty, reduced turnover, and established a self-reinforcing economic cycle. Higher wages increased purchasing power, which in turn fueled demand for goods, creating growth for both the company and society at large. In this way, Ford was not only a mechanical innovator, but also a social and economic visionary, reshaping the relationship between labor, management, and consumers. Ford's influence extended far beyond the factory floor. He invested in steel production, media, and even military armaments, creating a vertically integrated industrial empire. His newspapers and other media ventures amplified his ideas and influence, while his steel and automotive enterprises ensured that he controlled key elements of the supply chain. During World War I and II, Ford's factories played a crucial role in producing military vehicles and equipment, demonstrating the strategic importance of his industrial innovations on a global scale. The DuPonts, alchemists of modern industry. From France came Pierre Samuel DuPont, fleeing the upheavals of revolution and bringing with him a knowledge of chemistry and explosives. What began as a small gunpowder company blossomed over 2 centuries into one of the largest chemical conglomerates on the planet. Today, the DuPont family empire touches nearly every aspect of modern life, from aerospace materials and agriculture to consumer products. Their innovations have shaped society in ways often invisible but universally felt. Nylon, Teflon, Lycra, and neoprene are just a few examples of technologies that originated under DuPont leadership. During the 20th century, the family became indispensable suppliers for both world wars and top-secret projects such as the Manhattan Project. Their mastery of invention, material science, and strategic investments cemented them as a cornerstone of industrial power, bridging chemistry, manufacturing, and technological innovation. Invisible power and dynastic interconnection. What makes these families truly remarkable is not just their wealth, but the way their power interconnects and perpetuates itself. It is said that they do not merely control companies, they control entire sectors of the global economy: banking, energy, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, technology, and media. Their influence often manifests quietly through interlocking directorates, arranged marriages, joint ventures, and strategic representation on boards of the largest corporations. They rarely need to own 100% of a company. A strategic stake and control of the board are enough to steer policy, shape markets, and influence governments. Organizations such as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, and major foundations often act as conduits for their subtle influence. They fund think tanks, universities, and media institutions, shaping public opinion and policy in ways most people never see. Some call them the hidden elite, others, the architects of the world order. The influence of these dynasties persists today. Even tech billionaires like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg operate within systems and financial frameworks established by these families over a century ago. The Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Morgans designed the modern game. The new players operate by its rules, sometimes unaware of the invisible hands that shaped them. A reflection on power. True power is subtle. It does not shout its presence, yet it sets the rules for everyone else. These dynasties demonstrate that the most enduring wealth is not that which is spent in opulence or flaunted in public, but that which is invested in structures of influence, banks, industries, governments, and institutions that endure beyond a single lifetime. When you pay for gasoline, swipe your credit card, or use a smartphone, you are participating in a world subtly shaped by decisions made generations ago in boardrooms, ghetto storefronts, and private estates. The legacy of these families proves that influence is eternal when coupled with strategy, discretion, and a vision that spans centuries. Perhaps true power is never seen. It is exercised silently, yet it touches every aspect of daily life, from energy and technology to finance and global stability. Like, share, and subscribe for more.